Welcome to Remembering You, a space for slowing down, seeing again, and gathering the parts of yourself that the world asked you to forget.
Each week, we wander through stories, ancient, personal, and collective, to explore how perspective changes everything. How what we look at and how we look can open doors to who we truly are.
Take a breath, feel your feet.
You've arrived.
Let's begin remembering you. Do we tell folks that it's our wedding anniversary?
What?
That this is what we do on our wedding anniversary.
What? We are so romantic. Let's do a podcast.
Ooh la la.
Hello, friends. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
For an episode of Remembering You. We are Aliceanne and Ryan.
Yep.
Happy to be here talking about the way we make sense of life and experience and the way we see the world sometimes and how it changes and shifts.
Yeah. My nerdy little scientific brain has been freaked out about that for a very long time.
But we are grounded right now. We are sitting.
Yeah.
We are breathing.
We are drinking coffee.
You are drinking some nectar of the gods.
So we want to talk about attention today. Attention is such a rich... Well, it's so funny because on the one hand, it's so mundane. I think we take it for granted. You know, all of us know, like, oh yeah, I can pay attention to something. Or we've been probably told this since we were little kids. Focus. Listen to what I'm saying.
Give me your eyes.
Right. And so there's this way in which we can be kind of blind to, or just maybe dismissive. It can be one of those things that seems like not a very interesting place to think about very deeply or pay attention to. But it is not an accident that, spiritual traditions for thousands of years, I think Buddhism is kind of the big famous one that, uses meditation. So we're using our attention as a kind of like a training ground. Like that's not, it's not a torture device to bore us.
No, not at all.
It's a doorway. Like there's a lot here to explore.
For years, I was doing photography for fun and also for business. And I think of attention through the way a camera lens works. You think of the aperture, the ability to zoom way in and also way out, and what that does in the field of view and what is in focus and how the light comes into play. Our attentional system is similar. We have the power of focus, and that power of focus can change our whole picture depending on what we're zooming in on, or zooming out to get a fuller, broader, more expansive understanding of a particular scene in our experience.
And we could actually do a couple of little experiments just to illustrate, and then maybe use that as a bridge to kind of point to something deeper. So, for example, I would invite all of you who are listening right now, assuming you're not driving a car or doing something that like really needs your focus, you could look around the space that you're in and just scan the room for maybe all of the objects that are green. So I'll give you all just a quick moment. Just kind of turn your head and notice, like, okay, where's everything around me that is green in color? And then I want you to close your eyes and think to yourself, where are all the objects around me that are blue?
Mm.
And so there's,
Mm.
and so open your eyes and just kind of check, like, did you get it all?
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah.
Missed a lot.
Yeah. And so, of course, because we're trying to find all the things that are one color, and then that means we're missing everything else that's not that color, essentially.
I'm curious, what do you notice is a part of the moments when maybe your attention is hijacked? What does that look like for you?
Well, it's very much like that little color exercise that we just did. So, for example, if I'm stressed, let's say I'm at work and I got an email from a colleague that was annoying, or I felt angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get hijacked by that emotional experience. So if I get this email, I feel this feeling, and then it's like a runaway train, and then my thoughts are thinking maybe, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're such a jerk, or how could they be so stupid, or and then I'm driving home, and then I'm just noticing all of the idiot drivers around me. Like, it starts to color my world in a way that then just feels like that's the way the world is. I don't notice that I've been hijacked into this emotional experience. And then my attention is just noticing all of the things that are similar to that. And I don't know, maybe this has happened to me before. I've stopped at the mailbox. So we live in Texas, and we have a black mailbox, and it sits at the side of the road. And in the heat of the summer, sometimes you go to open that mailbox, and it's hot enough that you can, your fingers, not that it really burns your fingers, but like, I have been so emotionally caught up in a storm that I go to get my mail from the hot mailbox, and I get pissed off at the mailbox that it's too hot. And oftentimes that has been a little clue. It's like, okay, that's absurd. You're getting mad at a mailbox, for goodness sakes. And so maybe there's something else going on.
Oh, yeah. For you in those moments, are you able to shift or adjust your attention? How does that play out in your experience?
Yeah. So very often when we're hijacked in a way by negativity, so to say. So if I'm mad at my colleague, and I'm mad at the drivers around me, and I'm mad at my mailbox, that's very painful. Like, all of those things are hard. They're not pleasurable. None of us enjoy stuff like that. And there's a choice that we can make to either turn toward the pain, or to distract ourselves. So again, I can use my attentional system in a way that will ultimately create more freedom, or it'll just further entrap me. So I have certainly spent years of my life, I come home from work, or, I log off. I've worked remotely for years. So maybe it's just, I close my laptop, I walk out of my office, and I pour myself a drink. So that's a distraction. Or maybe I pick up my phone and I decide to play a cute little game on my phone. Or I turn on the TV and I just watch The Great British Baking Show. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with those, but we have to be very careful and ask ourselves, like, am I aware that I'm distracting myself in this moment? And sometimes that's just genuinely what my nervous system needs. Like I just need a fucking break for a second. But am I conscious that that's what I'm doing? And then there are the other route I can go is to go sit on our back porch and just get kind of still and quiet and pay attention to the breeze and feel the feelings that I'm feeling more fully. So can I almost like relax into my anger, my frustration, my confusion, whatever my emotional world is like can I stop fighting it? Can I stop trying to control it? And can I just rest and allow almost like open myself up to it even more and like just take some deep breaths and just let it do its work.
I think it's interesting to notice in my experience, there are sometimes that I need to do that practice of sitting still and allowing myself to recognize what I'm focused on in a moment and to love what is and also to acknowledge that I have the power to redirect my attention and my focus from something that is painful to something that brings joy, or from looking the way that I'm looking at something that's painful that is disempowering to seeing a moment of embracing the pain, and instead of perpetually pushing it forward or kicking the can down the road, seeing it changed into something that is beautiful, and I'm actually able to leverage it in my experience. Sometimes sitting is helpful. And then other times my brain, like I will feel in my head, I need to go for a walk. And there is something about moving forward along a sidewalk or a path in the woods or in our own yard where my attention is on taking steps forward, and I'm noticing in the periphery of my eyes that things are going past, that I'm going past things that are around me, and that can help me feel like, okay, I am able to physically move past things that mentally, emotionally, maybe even spiritually can feel like I'm trapped by that. And physical movement will help me redirect my attentional system and be able to come into a place of maybe self-regulation and refocus through that experience.
Oh yeah, you name something so important that I didn't have words for, prior to maybe 5 years ago. The way, like, just how powerful practices like that are. And it and so this is what I mean in a way, like the way my little rational scientific brain kind of gets freaked out, because it doesn't make any sense. But it's so true.
Yeah, it is.
How when I'm stuck, when I'm feeling stuck, when I'm feeling trapped, like, or I can't figure something out, or I'm just like captured by this intensity, something as simple as going to take a walk, like the very concrete, mundane way of I'm just literally putting one foot in front of another. And that then signals something to my inner world that, like, I'm also putting one foot in front of the other emotionally or spiritually. That one is a reflection of another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not logical
Mm-mm.
in a way.
Mm-mm. No.
And I am sometimes like totally delighted and like, oh my God, this is just so cool. Like this way that reality mirrors itself in those, it feels like discovering a little treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And also sometimes it can be like, but that doesn't make any sense. and like if I can't make sense of it, then it's dangerous, and like it's so there's a bit of a tension there sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, in your experience, what are things that maybe you notice in your world and around you that it doesn't come to the surface until you pause?
Oh gosh.
Like, what's something ordinary you notice differently when you really pay attention to it?
Oh. So the first thing that comes to mind is in 2020 when COVID happened, and I mean the whole world stopped. In Austin, there was like a month, I think, roughly, where businesses were closed. Nobody was going to work unless you were, an essential worker. The little neighborhood that I was in, like there was suddenly no traffic. And so the streets were filled with kids riding their bikes, families taking a walk. You could just, it wasn't alarming to see a little kid toddling down the street in the middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I, every day at the end of my work day, about 6 p.m. or so, so after dinner, like I'd make it a point to go sit outside, and there was something in me that just knew I needed to sit and watch the sunrise or sunset.
Mm.
And I was, I'd watched the sunset 100 times before, and I'd been, but I'd never consciously been present for the way that the world around us. I mean, it's like we get an entirely different universe.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between day and night is profound. There are totally different sounds. Everything
Mm-hmm.
looks different. The
Mm-hmm.
air smells different. Completely different animals. All the ones that are awake during the day, they go to sleep, and then all the nighttime ones come out, and you get stars, and you have a moon. I mean, it's like being transported to another world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never noticed that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it so thoroughly captured my attention in a way that my attention had never been captured by the mundane world before. And so I just kept showing up every night for months, and it started to really do its magic in a way that, I mean, I could sit here and talk about for hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I think about that question, my first thought is on nature and the changing of seasons.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a forest, and it's different living in the forest versus places I've lived where we had sprinklers and like your grass was always green because it was constantly being watered every day. And we are in a place where if there's no rain, very quickly the grasses and the leaves and the very earth, like underneath your feet, you can feel that there is no more moisture in it. And slowing down and looking and feeling and being a part of an ecosystem is one way that I have noticed the ordinary in different ways. And it's because I was looking in that direction where before I wasn't.
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned earlier about why we turn our head away from the things that are painful, and what it means to kind of turn our head towards it. And I wanted to kind of inject a little bit of, you know, my psychology, scientific perspective to help us orient to this space a little bit, and maybe give it some guardrails and some structure and a framework. Because at least for me, that's primarily how I orient.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine a question that folks might have is maybe like, why do we have an attentional system, or how do I? So you used the phrase attentional system in your story, and that's kind of the what sparked the thought of, I think we need to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I imagine most people haven't heard that phrase and don't really understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Which then brought me to a deeper question of like, why do we even have an attentional system in the first place? Like, what function does it serve? And I think in order to do that, we need to talk about human needs.
Mm-hmm.
Because the basic fundamental needs that we have are what kind of pull on our attentional system.
Yes, we all have these basic needs or we call them drives, for safety, belonging, esteem, and meaning. And when one of them is under threat, it hijacks our attention completely.
Yeah. So, you know, you're not going to be able to meditate your way into peace if you're also simultaneously terrified of losing your job. You know, when our nervous system is just constantly scanning for a threat, because being terrified of losing your job gets at a really deep need that we have for safety and security. And so the body or the nervous system doesn't know the difference between that kind of terror and maybe like the terror of living in a war zone and not being sure if a bomb is going to drop over your head. Like the brain and the body, it's just terror. And so, you know, if you're afraid that you might not be able to put food on your table or a roof over your head, then it's really, really difficult to like, I mean, that just starts to cascade. You know, you can't get a good night's sleep. You just, it kind of starts to balloon in a way that can be really hard to wrap our arms around.
Maybe it would be good for us to take a little bit of a deep dive into some of the details of what are our basic human needs in our day-to-day experience.
Yes. The widely accepted, you know, from a scientific kind of Western perspective framework for human needs comes from an American psychologist. He died in 1970. His name was Abraham Maslow. And his work and research around the basic human needs got popularized by a management consultant into a pyramid. So you may have heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most people have seen this kind of pyramid structure. So Maslow actually didn't ever think of them that way. He thought of them as kind of like interconnected waves that were all influencing one another, but that's not nearly as clean and clear. And so, you know, and that's what management consultants do. They simplify things. And so they made them into a pyramid. And the levels of those pyramids, like at the bottom, you've got physiological body-based needs. We need air, food, water, sleep. We need to be warm enough or cold enough. So just basic, is my body comfortable, and do I got food in my belly, and do I have clothes on my back? And then we have a kind of a safety layer of, am I personally physically safe? Do I have financial security? Is my health, secure and safe enough? Is there stability and order in my life? Can I make sense of things? Do I have enough freedom from fear? Is another kind of safety need. If I'm pervasively afraid, and I think a lot of us are experiencing this in our just day-to-day life now.
Sure.
And so, I want us to appreciate the way that gets at the very bottom of our stack, so to say, of our human needs. We also have belonging needs. So we have a need for social connection, for friendship, for belonging, for intimacy, for trust, for being accepted by a group. And this isn't just a need that we have in childhood. This is, none of it, we don't ever graduate from these needs. They don't ever go away just because we turn 18 and now we're an adult and we can make choices in our lives. This is lifelong. We have a need for self-esteem. We have a need to feel like we're respected by others and that we respect the other people around us. We have a need to be recognized and appreciated. We have a need to feel like we can accomplish things and that we can be confident enough to make a decision and achieve a goal. Of course, that can get kind of hijacked by the ego, and that can kind of run away with us a little bit. But it does speak to a very true basic need that we have that's very healthy. And then there's kind of two more that are not ego based. So all of the ones that we've talked about, like safety and food and belonging and self-esteem, those are all, my safety, my need for belonging. But then these next two they start to kind of take us outside of ourselves. And so we can think of them almost as being needs. So there's the need for self-actualization, which means really just, can I live up to my full potential? Can I find my creativity and my authentic expression in life? And can I grow personally and develop? And then there's, at the very tippy top of the peak of the pyramid is something like self-transcendence. So can I connect to something that is greater than myself? I think we all eventually recognize the kind of, there's something in us that is not fulfilled if all we're doing with our life is, getting mine. We climb to the top of the career ladder and I've got the house and the picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the nice little dog, but something still feels empty in my life. It's usually because this higher, so to say, need for, we are fundamentally driven to need to serve something greater than ourselves. And so for some people that might just be, working at a food bank, or it could just be connecting to a value held in a community. Maybe you're part of a kind of an activist community that's trying to fight for some sort of right that other people don't have, from your own point of privilege. Sometimes. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the idea that need for self-transcendence can even be found in something like sports? Does that feel true, or how do you?
Absolutely. So the first thing that comes to my mind is my dad's experience with high school football.
Yeah.
He was a center in high school in a small little town in southern Ohio, and there is a transcendence, or maybe I would say there is a sense of connection or wholeness or being complete when he talks about his high school football days. And it is in a way that reveals the value that he has in his internal experience for being a part of a whole, not being the star player of the team, but being a teammate who is pulling their weight and a part of the experience of winning and losing through each play and moving the pigskin down the field.
Yeah. So the needs that we have at all of the different layers then create these different kinds of systems in our psychology. So in the same way that our body has physical systems like circulatory system, immune system, musculoskeletal system, those different systems help our body stay healthy and in a state of homeostasis and, making sure everything's running smoothly. Psychologically, we have the same kind of thing. And the attentional system is one of those systems that's helping us get all of these needs met that we just talked about at all of these different levels. And of course, we have more than just our attentional system. We have attachment system. I think we're probably going to talk about that in the next episode. We have a motivational system. And so I think attentional system is, I would say both attentional system and attachment system, which I think is probably why we're going to talk about both of those first. Like they are, if we're going to frame our needs in the sense of a pyramid where there's kind of some more important ones at the bottom or more foundational ones, we could kind of do the same thing with the systems of our psyche. And attention and attachment, those two things are, they're just non-negotiable. When those go wrong, everything else, like there's just such a deep cascade effect.
I think oftentimes we don't recognize where we have an unhealthy or maybe the energy or the focus, our attention on one of those heartfelt needs or parts of Maslow's hierarchy. We didn't receive one of those in our childhood or during our formidable years.
Yeah.
And so we have an over attention or a hyper focus on the thing that we didn't get, so much so that it can become unhealthy in our experience. And so whenever something comes in contact or might threaten that, we get way out of whack and experience stress and anxiety and fear around losing something that we value and is obviously a very important part of the human experience, but it is blown out of proportion, or we make it bigger than maybe what is healthy in relationship to all of the other needs that we need to have in our life. And so then there can be addictions. We can view life from a perspective of scarcity in regards to those experiences. And it's not necessarily a fun path to be on. And oftentimes we have to have someone else from the outside help us to identify where that unhealthy engagement with our attentional system being focused on something that is important, but it needs to be a part of a whole.
Well, and also I would say the other kind of dynamic that pops up, it's almost at like the other end of the spectrum in a way, where because our early life experiences, because nobody had perfect parents. I mean, even all parents, for the most part, do the best they can. But, they too have their own traumas and, blind spots, so to say. And so I think this might be a great time to tell a story about a friend of mine who had a blind spot, so to say, at the physiological level that it is really surprising for a lot of people. So during COVID, there was a group of women that I'd get together with, because all of us were so separated, from a social standpoint, we'd make an intention to get together at least once every 3 months for a long weekend. And so, we do the whole thing where we quarantined and we tested ourselves, just make sure it was safe to come together. And we were at a weekend retreat, and we're all, I think, this is like day 2 of the retreat. And we're all sitting around in the living room, just kind of, some of us are reading a book, some of us are doing some work. A couple of them were just having kind of quiet little conversations. And the friend next to me, I'd known her for 7-8 years at that point. And she was kind of new to this friend group. I'd kind of brought her in and introduced her to these other women that I knew. And she was just noticing all of us sitting around in this big living room. And she's like, everybody has, a bottle of water or a cup of tea. And she's like, I noticed that about all of you. Like, you always kind of have something within arm's reach for most of the time. She's like, are you guys just always thirsty all the time? Like, I don't ever carry a bottle of water with me. She's like, I just don't even ever think about drinking fluids. I just looked at her, and so I knew this about her already, because we'd kind of had little conversations related to her sort of, like she would talk about her physical experience. She experienced migraines a lot, and that always kind of mystified her. And in that moment, there were just all these light bulbs, like all these little puzzle pieces that clicked together. And I was like, oh my God, I see you at a layer that just I hadn't quite noticed before. And so then we kind of started a group conversation with all of us. I sort of pulled all the women into this conversation. And this woman, she started asking us, like, what is feeling thirsty like? Like, why do you guys always have, a bottle of water next to you? And it's so funny how difficult it is to put that into words, because, all of us just kind of think that, well, I mean, being thirsty is just being thirsty. It's almost like trying to describe the color red. It's just like, well, I don't know. How do you put that? And so we were, starting to describe it, and she's sitting there shaking her head like, nope, I don't feel that. No, it's not what that is. And then she said to us, well, the only time I want water is after I've done a really hard workout. I want water because I know it's cool and it's going to kind of cool me down. And she's like, is that what you guys mean by being thirsty? And we were like, nope. And so what is also true about her is her parents, they were both academics. They brilliant people, very kind, wouldn't hurt a fly, but completely misattuned to their own bodies. And she's an only child. And so, for example, I had gone over to dinner to her parents' house maybe a few months prior to that. And it was the first time I'd met them. And they don't season their food, like not even salt. So for them, food is purely functional. There's no, so when I say that they're not attuned to their bodies, like I mean this in a really profound kind of level. Like they don't even notice the lack of flavor, so to say, of the food that they're putting in their mouth. And so in a similar way, and so it's known in the literature kind of within psychology. So her experience is not actually that rare. So if a parent, the degree to which a parent attunes to a child's sense of need for thirst, or am I hungry right now? Like neurobiologically, we are all wired to connect a sense of thirst to a particular physical response. So like we have the wiring, but whether or not the brain can actually interpret that signal from the body in a sense, needs to be taught to us by our parents, attuning to our own need for thirst or hunger when we're children. And if mom and dad didn't do that well enough in our formative years, we then kind of have a blind spot to it in our adult years. And this moment for her started, it was such a huge light bulb for her to start to connect the dots of, oh my goodness, all the other humans around me can attune to their sense of thirst in a way that I can't. And her experience of something as fundamental as being thirsty was completely different than everyone else's. And, and so over the years, she started just like experimenting. Well, what is it like if I just kind of give myself some water throughout the day? And she asked us, she's like, so what do you do? Do you just like, do you just drink your day's needs of water? Like, do you split it up kind of 3 big chunks throughout the day with every meal? Or she's like, should I just kind of sip on it throughout the day? It was really fascinating to kind of watch her try to make sense of like, well, what do I do?
Wow. The power of pointing and direction. When I think of some of my experiences growing up in the Christian church, there was a strong emphasis. There was a really definite pointing towards thou shalt not.
Oh, yeah.
From Exodus chapter 20 and the 10 Commandments. There was this, there is a stepping away from all of the bad. And it wasn't until I started going through a process of deconstruction that I began to see things through the lens, or my attention was recognizing that there was a pointing by Jesus to our hearts, and seeing and understanding, having our attentional system going through the eye of our heart in the way that we see people and situations, not just in a black and white, this is good or this is bad, this is evil and this is holy, and the things that I am abstaining from, but rather, what is the attention to be put on instead of this fear-based or sin consciousness reality of life? And one of the parables that I really appreciate in this idea that Jesus wasn't just teaching moral lessons, but maybe he was also training how to see, is in a passage we find, Luke chapter 10, where the story of the Good Samaritan is told. And it's this idea that shapes the attention of his hearers from, there is someone who is a Samaritan, and so that would have been a half-breed. They're not the full-blooded Jewish child of God. They are separated, they're othered, they're not welcomed into the celebration of the divine within the temple or the synagogue. They would have had to stay out in the outer courts with the women and the children. They couldn't go into the special place. And yet, at the center of this story that the Christ tells is pointing at something that the Samaritan, the outsider, can see, and the way that they're able to see is through their heart, and they have compassion for someone who is hurting and in pain. So basically, there is a man who is a traveler, and he is overtaken by some robbers and thieves and beaten up and left on the side of the road for dead. And there was a Levite and a priest. So these are the holy, the special. In today's vernacular, they would be the influencer, the one who is the prettiest and has the most influence and has all the money, the resources. And these two folks, instead of passing by this humbled, beat up, and discarded pile of humanity laying on the side of the road, they pass the other side of the road so that they don't become defiled. Again, it's the perspective of thou shalt not. It's I have to keep myself clean and pure, and this is something that I do by saying that's other, and I don't do the other. And then you have the Good Samaritan who comes and sees from his heart, and Jesus is pointing the attention of his hearers to act from not a space of it's all about me and doing what is going to make me bigger and brighter and more beautiful, but a space of how can I live from a place of compassion and acceptance and love. And Jesus is showing that there is a spiritual maturity that can take place as we see life through a perspective of not us versus them, or fear that somehow because of my kindness, God is going to think less of me, but actually the heart is giving the attention and the direction in that moment. And so the Good Samaritan takes time to heal and to care for this unfortunate soul that received a hard knock in their experience, and it points to being able to see from the heart versus law, judgment, scarcity, and fear. We see over and over again that Jesus used stories and parables and word pictures to communicate something about our attentional system and to take us out of a mindset of, do I have enough to somehow please the divine, to seeing that everything is perfect and right within our hearts, and we just need to rest and trust and share in those moments that it's clear to do so. Another passage where Jesus is directing our nervous system and giving us an opportunity to rest in and to attend to the beauty instead of the threat is in a exhortation to consider the lilies of the field, how they don't toil, they don't work, they don't save, they're not constantly in this rat race of more, and an experience of never being enough, but rather the idea is that the divine knows exactly what a lily in the field needs to be beautiful and to blossom and to bring delight and joy to those that are within its presence, and that we can trust in a mindfulness sort of a way that this pointer is helping us to step out of some unhealthy relationships to those hierarchy of needs that, because of the lack in our experience, we sometimes grab onto and find ourselves oftentimes in a lot of misery because it isn't balanced in a way that reflects who we truly are at our deepest core and our very nature.
It sounds like you're pointing to that there's a relationship. So you mentioned, looking through the heart, and you mentioned nervous system, and using our attention. And my psychology brain kind of starts to notice the dance between attention and attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the body and the mind and the heart, kind of the way they all work together. And the way we can fight with ourselves, or maybe we can hold one part of our experience up as better or stronger or more valuable. And then, so I think in our modern culture, well, and just within my own life, the mind can become, the crown jewel. Like literally sits on top of our head. I mean, sits on top of our body, and there's this way in which we can kind of, and then our bodies almost become just this shadow of a vehicle that is designed to just carry around our brain, like the most powerful, important aspect of our experience. And, and our heart, that's just a vulnerable space to be attacked, or to, to be, so we got to like guard it and protect it. And we can't ever be seen to be coming from our hearts. Like that's a sign of weakness. There's all these ways that we can kind of get confused and distorted. And, because society kind of gives us messages about what's the right way to go about things. And so I'm noticing that interplay between mind and heart and body and attention and attachment, like our need for belonging and our need for intimacy. And, I think it's easy to, like, when we're in pain and we haven't maybe had, like, if it's difficult to find friends now, despite the irony of like social media, supposedly we're all more connected than ever, and yet we also simultaneously feel more lonely than ever or more anxious than ever. So it's like, well, why is that? And I think there's a clue there about the way our attention is getting hijacked and how that's impacting our attachment systems. And so we'll definitely explore that more in further episodes. But I just want to kind of get us curious about, I'm noticing that within myself, and I imagine those listening have their own experiences and their own dynamic and maybe their own kind of like clinging and grasping and addictions versus blind spots and pushing away and just this kind of void, like in the way that my friend had this blind spot about being thirsty. And it wasn't until she was connected enough within a group of people who modeled for her like the first time in her life. She's in her 40s at this point. So she's finally like rested in a group, and her nervous system is calm enough that she can start to look and use her attention to just scan the room and be like, wait a minute. This is something's different. And then she can find curiosity in that space of safety. And so like you mentioned, sometimes we really need people around us to help us along this journey. And that could not be more true.
Our teachers, our therapists, our gurus, our pastors, our rabbis, there is that gift that they give to us, our partner, that is able to reflect those moments. I think of, as I would define myself, in the category of a Jesus loving mystic. And there was this time in my life when I shifted in my understanding that at the core of who I am rotten and I am broken, and God hates my very core.
Oof. Gosh.
And so that process of waking up from, oh, this is not this is not what existence is all about for me. And it was a little bit scary because here I am, my attention is on one thing. And then I found in my spiritual world, my attention shifted. And it was through certain teachers and books and experiences that I had that my way of seeing no longer worked. Of seeing myself through the lens that God hates the very core of who I am. And so in the Christian vernacular, we have this term atonement, and it's atonement theory, the idea that Jesus had to come and die because God needed a whipping boy for our sins and our brokenness. And when that no longer worked for me, I had to sit with, well, what is atonement? And my attention to the wholeness that comes through my faith experience was a doorway into, oh, there is actually something beautiful inside of me that I have allowed to be small because I wasn't able to focus on that. And so scriptures along the lines of John 10:30, where the Christ says, the Father and I are one. It was like, oh, okay, there's a unitive consciousness. There is no separation. And then Jesus in Matthew 6 says, if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. And then also in John 6, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And each of these three are shifting and changing the idea of atonement to an at-one-ment. To Jesus came to show us that we were never separated, that it was all a projection of us versus them, and a beating ourselves up in a way that brought separation instead of self-love and acceptance and healing from the truest and deepest part of who we are, being able to see and become one movement of love and existence instead of all of these fractured little bits and pieces. So this idea of we receive pointers from other people and wisdom, traditions, and scriptures are all helping us to focus on how we see ourselves and how we see the world around us. And in my experience, that went from a pretty drastic way of us versus them was the way that I saw. And I even othered myself from the divine to, oh, Jesus came to be a demonstration of this unitive consciousness with the divine force of love animating the universe, and has welcomed me into having a single eye and my whole body, my whole experience, all of the needs that I have in existence being illuminated in such a way that there is a healthy relationship to those hierarchy of needs. And then as my treasure shifted from unhealthy to healthy relationship between the divine and myself, it also affected the way that I related to my partner and my children and my coworkers and my neighbors and my friends, because where my treasure is, there my heart will also be.
That's beautiful. So it sounds as though I had a kind of a secular version of that kind of experience, so to say. My meaning making in life never came through scripture or through spirituality, and instead it was kind of through the lens of psychology and science. And so I just want to name that for folks that, I mean, honestly, there are infinite doorways into the divine. So, you can find, like in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that self-transcendence, that you can find the tip of that pyramid through literally anything almost.
It is whatever gives you a sense of awe, of connection, of wonder, of being a part of something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And that comes into our experience through many different pathways. And I think is pointing us in a direction into the very heart and core of who we are, and then it goes out into the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because how we see ourselves is how we see the world, and vice versa. How we see the world is how. So, like at the beginning when I talked about being mad at my mailbox and being mad at my coworkers, I then also, if I pay attention to my own narrative, the only thought, the thoughts running through my head, I will notice that they're pretty shitty. Like, they're judgmental of myself just to the same degree that they're judgmental of others. And so for me, in my own trajectory, it was really critical. So we talked about psychedelics and our kind of our us story. And I kind of want to just hover around this topic of attention and the way we use our attention just in the everyday mundane sense of, doing our jobs and cooking dinner and taking care of the kids and feeding ourselves. But then when that drive for self-transcendence and for growth on a personal level, like self-actualization, there's a role that higher states of consciousness plays. So kind of like taking our attentional system into a different space than the way it's focused in the everyday world. And, there's lots of really interesting neurobiology around this, like what changes kind of happen in the brain, whether it's through meditation or, an exogenous substance like psychedelics or, like fasting, for example, is another one. And so I kind of want to hover on this topic and get curious about what role shifting our attention plays into maybe our healing journey or expanding our attentional system. So I'm curious what that is for you. Like, what comes to mind?
Absolutely. So those experiences are moments when I would define it as my attention stops chasing objects and just is. There's this way in which psychedelics feel like my attention dissolves away just into the simplicity of awareness. Like there's nothing to look at. There's a letting go or a resting into that moment. And it is something that I had experienced through meditation, through times in solitude and silence in the wilderness. And psychedelics does it really quick.
Oof. Rocket ship.
20, 30 minutes. And you're in this place of just pure awareness. And I probably should say that I have never had a bad trip, even though I've shared my story of having some very unsettling internal experiences with the way that I relate to myself and the outer world, and no longer feeling a sense of ground or center for an extended period of time. And that was not a terrifying experience that I had. And I know some folks who will have and have had experiences that when they come up on psychedelics, it is anything but a beautiful, transcendent experience of just resting into consciousness. So I just felt like we needed to have a little bit of a disclaimer that there are different ways that our experience responds to these shifts in our way of finding and directing our attention. And it's not always pleasant.
Oh gosh, no. And even so we did kind of a meditation training for a couple of years, part of a wider sangha, and had like a formal teacher, and that was, I mean, I'd meditated off and on, kind of like using the Waking Up app, for example, Sam Harris's app. I think I was part of the beta group way back when he first started it. And even in college, I'd kind of flirted with meditation and had periods of time where like I did it every day. But I'd never really been formally trained. And gosh, is that a huge difference? Having like an actual teacher who's walked this path and knows a whole lot more than I do. And even in a meditation space, so no psychedelics, like it's just me resting my attention. And that first year, there were several months. So we were like 6 months into the training or so, 5 months. And so I was really starting to kind of like get the hang of it. And, those muscles were starting to be developed, and I was finding a space. I mean, it is similar to psychedelics. Like you absolutely can, I mean, it's also very different. But they're, they certainly relate to one another. And even though I was walking into that space slowly and, like with pointers from a teacher and with the support of a sangha, and, it wasn't a rocket ship like psychedelics. But my nervous system was still freaking out. Like there would be moments of just sheer terror because I could feel my awareness changing, and my instinct, my rational mind, my habit is to control and steer. And because that's how I, my whole life, have found safety. And so now I'm being asked to surrender and to open and to rest at a level, and I'd been on a long journey already of like resting and slowing down. And here's like a whole nother layer that I'm finding. And there's all this reactivity that's coming up. And this is very normal. I understand now it's just part of the process of waking up and kind of finding new layers to our attention. And anyway, I don't know that I have a point other than just to name that the rational, there is this, I don't know, it's like a cleansing process, or just, you just got to work through the knots and the kinks within yourself, and your psyche will serve up, whatever there is that is not yet resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll just kind of one by one, or maybe 10 at a time, you'll just get kind of like, okay, here's this. Now, can you sit with this? Can you feel this? Can you kind of stretch and contain and hold and let move? And yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded, so today is our 3-year wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too.
And in the few weeks leading up to our wedding, I realized that there had been a major shift in my heart opening to you. And there were still fears and doubts and anxieties about remarrying that I was still working through. And some of the things, it was hard for me to get clear on what is my true source of anxiety or fear or doubt or second guessing myself because of the way that my first marriage ended and the experience of betrayal, stepping into another space of vulnerability with a human, even though you're a beautiful human and I love your soul, because of the pain of the past, I wasn't fully clear and clean. And I will always have those scars with me that I bump up against. But I knew that I needed to spend some extra TLC with my heart and my mind and also with my body, directing my attention to, okay, what are the loudest voices in this moment of warning, of concern, of you really need to be clear on what you're getting yourself into with getting remarried.
Yeah.
And so the weekend before our wedding, I got away and spent time alone camping in the woods. And it was really important for me to have that silence and that solitude and also separation.
Yeah, very much.
So that I was able to name clearly what each of those pieces and parts of myself were, and to let them know that I'm listening, I'm attuning, I'm giving you my attention, and I'm not running from, and I'm not hiding, and I'm not trying to numb the experiences of the past. And it was a very healing weekend in the woods because I was able to reconcile, this is scary, and the fear doesn't get to sit in the driver's seat of my car. Like, I trust my heart, and I'm also going to verify my experience and have some checks and balances to make sure that I'm not crazy here.
Yeah, I want to get kind of practical for a moment and name the ways that like our attention can be trained just like a muscle in the gym. That so you at that point had a life, decades long practices of using your attention, attuning to your emotional experience, to your physical experience, to your mental experience, to your spiritual, all of the different kind of layers and aspects of our human experience. And so that was a really well-worn path for you.
It was.
And, for those who don't have that, I kind of just want to offer maybe some ways that folks can get started taking some steps on that path. I would say that, I think we've already named, there is this unavoidable, you have to make a choice to turn toward what is uncomfortable. And And so the first thing that comes to mind is my alcohol addiction. So I've been sober now for, I don't know, a while. I had a year where I was more than a year where I didn't have a drink. And then there were a couple of months where I started drinking again. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm just like back on the wagon again. So now it's been maybe 4 or 5 months that I've been no alcohol. But it took me 2 years before I got to the point where I could abstain from alcohol completely for that first year. And in those 2 years, so I knew that one path was like, cold turkey, just kind of like they do in AA. You stop drinking, and not, I mean, there's nothing wrong with AA. It's a beautiful process. It works really well for a lot of people, but I have a rebel in me, and I knew that I could not like abstain because that's going to kick my rebel off. And my rebel is going to say, fuck you. You can't do it. Like I had to figure out, how do I convince my rebel to let me not drink alcohol anymore, in a sense. And so I just started noticing, how does it feel in my body, in my emotional world, in my mental world? How does it feel when I spend a night, and I didn't drink a ton. It's not like I was stumbling into bed and, slurring my words. It is usually only just a drink, but it's like, how do I feel when I have a drink? And then what is it like the next morning? And I would spend months just kind of turning my head toward and attuning to what that was genuinely, truly like. And then I would start to experiment with, okay, I'm going to set an intention to not have a drink tonight. And then the anxiety monster would, usually about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, it's like, give me the drink. It was this little monster inside my chest that was like, feed me. And I would say, nope, I'm just going to sit and feel you to the degree that I can. And sometimes I could do that for 5 minutes. Sometimes I could do it all night. And I just, there was this long period of back and forth of like just feeling that monster fully. And so anyway, all I'm saying is we have to start to turn toward our experience and feel the things that are painful. And that is not an overnight process. And sometimes our psyche goes, nope, I can't do this today. And we just fall back into our old pattern. And it is so important to not judge ourselves. Like, can we also pick up, like, along with our curiosity in turning toward the things that are painful, can we also pick up compassion and understanding and kindness? Not to say, I mean, I certainly did not succeed. Like, very often I was swimming in guilt and shame and judgment, but I was also simultaneously like just trying, just reminding myself like, okay, I see you judgment and I see you shame. Can I just like kindness as well? Can I just continue to bring in compassion? It doesn't get rid of the judgment.
No.
But it just adds the compassion into the mix. And eventually the compassion becomes, again, it's like a muscle in a gym. The more I use it, the more it's present. And it kind of starves the judgment in a way. And I don't, that judgment and shame and guilt, or fear, all of that is so much quieter in my day-to-day experience now.
Mm-hmm. Reminds me of the story of the little boy with his grandfather, and the grandfather is telling a story about these two wolves, and the little boy says, well, which wolf wins at the end of the story? And the grandfather says, the one you feed.
Yep.
And if we think of our attention as we are feeding
Yep.
either our good wolf or our bad wolf, our attention is literally giving oxygen to those parts of us that we want to, or sometimes that we don't want to become stronger in our experience.
Right. But we can be so captured by them. Like nobody wants to be critical, judgmental, just misery and pain. Like nobody wants, that does not feel good to anyone. And yet it can be so habitual that that's just where we go out of habit, out of pain, out of confusion.
As you were telling your story, a word came to mind, and that is intimacy. And I like to say that intimacy could be said, into me you see.
Yeah.
And the actions that you were taking were deliberate so that you could see into the very heart of who you are and what your experience was. And that was not an easy time frame.
No, it was awful.
Yeah. And you felt it, and I felt it,
yeah.
and other people in your world felt it.
Yeah.
And you did it beautifully, not just for yourself, practicing intimacy, but you also were practicing intimacy in a way, or inviting intimacy in a way that was transparent and honest and authentic. And it wasn't something that you did alone. It was with support and guidance from wisdom in your world.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Thank you.
So maybe we could say that it's less about control and more about intimacy, learning to be with what is.
Control is a delusion. Fundamentally, it is as seductive as certainty and like greed and sex. Like it's at that level. There's a way in which control can be very healthy, just like sex can be very healthy. But the way the Western mind has been trained to think about control is like there's such enormous bias that we're blind to because it's just so much the world we swim in. Like that's just kind of how we see reality. And if you've been raised in a Western context, kind of capitalistic, achievement oriented, goal focused, get the job so you can have the secure career and, get the wife or the great husband and have the kids. And, we have this American dream. And, it's not just an American dream. It's really the Western world's kind of dream. Their control kind of is one of the main levers that we're taught to use to drive our day-to-day experience, and we end up trying to control ourselves, and we end up trying to control our kids and our partners and our workplace. And it's often so destructive to some of those basic fundamental needs. And so kind of one little reminder. So in Maslow's hierarchy, there was a need for autonomy and a need for freedom. And in the world of psychology, you know, as psychologists after Maslow have gone on to continue to study his body of work and kind of broaden that field over and over and over again, you know, it's kind of a universally accepted understanding that a human's need for autonomy is fundamental. It's no different than our need for air and food and water. And it's non-negotiable. And so it's interesting to think about what's the relationship between autonomy and control. And if in my life I'm using control either toward myself or toward other people, that then kind of confuses my simultaneous need for autonomy or other people's need for autonomy, like then we're going to have a tension and a conflict, and it's going to start to create misery. And, you know, but there's also a way that we can have both of these things as a healthy relationship. I'm just trying to name that society has not given us a very wise template to follow. And that's often one of these distortions that we have to clean up when we're starting to use our attention, you know, whether we've got meditation or whether we're using psychedelics or if we're sitting with a therapist, or, you know, whatever our practices are, that's going to be one of the things that shows up pretty strong.
Yeah, even from childhood, I remember being told, and it was reinforced not just by my parents, but also other adults, Sunday school teachers, ministers, that there was somehow this pressure for self-control. Like, you have to control yourself.
Sure.
And that idea, even within the Christian narrative, is not I'm white knuckling against all of the poles that are unhealthy or unproductive in my life. It's actually a result of a surrender to that power that is greater than I am in my experience, and entering into a flow and an experience that is within, that is something that I only find as I learn what it means to be, instead of always trying to do.
Learning how to be instead of always trying to do. Yeah. That's there's more in that little statement than I like. It can be easy to just sort of let that pass through our minds thinking we understand it because the words are really simple. But I just want to pause. I just want to like,
there's a whole lot there.
Highlight. Yeah. I remember, what was it? Maybe a year ago, you know, you told me, you know, just go watch the fish. So we have a little koi pond. And because I was really bumping up against some deep pain and like in my slowing down process. And I did not understand what was happening. And you were like, just go watch the fish. And I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And so I'd, you know, and I'd sit there and I'd sit at the edge of the pond, like, okay, I'm supposed to watch the fish. Here I am. And I kept doing, like, I kept approaching it as if it were a task to complete, because that's how I was trained. Like, this is what the Western mind does. We do, we achieve the goal. We check off the box. And so I'd sit and I'm like, I don't get it. Like, okay, I'm sitting. And it wasn't that like I got bored and, oh, this is stupid. It was just like I could tell that I didn't understand what you were trying to say to me.
Mhm.
And it took me probably a year after that to
It's so fascinating because I read books by, from Christian mystics to uh, contemporary spirituality kind of gurus, and they all talk about this idea of being versus doing,
yeah.
but it has to come through the doorway of I'm at the door banging my head on the door
Yep.
of doing, to the extent that I find that it doesn't work and
Yeah.
I give up
Yeah.
and find being in that experience.
Yeah.
And that's why having a very simple practice each day, just to remind us that I am a human being and not a human doing, is so important. And it can be as frustrating as what you're describing.
Oh my gosh, it was awful.
Going and sitting and watching the fish. Like, okay, how is this a spiritual practice? Yes. Yes, it is. And the fight is okay.
Oh,
And
it's normal. It's part of it.
the time and the frustration and the feeling of I'm not making any progress, aka
Yep.
doing.
Right. I'm not getting anywhere.
Is very much a part of undoing, so that I can be.
Surrender. It's so funny. You would think that doing nothing would be the easiest thing in the world. And, for anybody who's tried to sit and meditate, I mean, instantly, all of the reactivity shows up. Like all of the ways that we want to distract and be busy and do, and, we just, it's so paradoxical how we crave. Like I remember early in my journey saying to people and thinking to myself, like, I don't have words to describe how exhausted I am. Like, I am tired in my bones, in my soul. I wouldn't have used the word soul because it's just not usually part of my meaning making. It's becoming more so. But anyway, and I'm only just now recognizing that fatigue. It's a kind of fatigue that no vacation can fix, or a long weekend doesn't even begin to touch just how tiring we can become. And it's because we don't know how to be. And eventually all of the doing just breaks. Like it just starts to break us. And that it's like an invitation to learn. I mean, that pain is so sacred, and it is the invitation into what will eventually free us.
And in my experience and way of making meaning in the world, I believe and also have experienced that I have come from love. And so at the very core of who I am is the gift of receiving and sharing love. And yet there is something inside of me that feels separated and broken and incapable of that experience. At different moments in my story, it has been really loud. And so coming home or finding that part of me that says, you belong, you're perfect just the way you are, the pain and the trauma that you've experienced in life is not something to be run from or to be hidden. There is nothing that you can do or not do to receive and experience unbegun, eternal, and unending love. And so in my experience and struggle and wrestling and fighting with being versus doing, I bump up against that echo inside of me that I will never be enough and I'll never be worthy. And my wound is too awful. And so I've discovered that when I'm struggling the most with being and not doing is when I need to just let go and rest into what my experience is with love, and to picture love and feel love and embrace love as the ground of my being. And that comes in different ways. It comes through Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
It comes through my partner. It comes through my kids. It comes through my vocation, my way of being, the way of service that I am to humanity, to the unseen world, to the more than human world in my experience. And it's okay that I still struggle or have moments where I doubt or second guess myself. Can I really just be? And is that enough?
I'm recognizing there was certainly a time in my life where if I would have heard somebody like you say those words that you just said, I would have had a pretty strong reaction, a painful, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that is not, like, how can you look out at the world today and say that there is love, that love is fundamentally, and, and I'd heard, the spiritual people. I mean, I know that this is something that's been said for millennia, and it would elicit in me an anger because it wasn't, I couldn't find it. I couldn't see it. And I mean, now I do. Like, I understand now why me then felt so angry and hurt and confused and like wanted to just, I just would have turned off the podcast and been like, well, this is a bunch of nonsense. There would have been a judgment and that's okay. That reactivity was not wrong.
No, not at all.
And it's ironically, it's actually an expression of the love.
It is.
And that is a very confusing thing when you're in that pain and that reactivity. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I guess all I want to say about that is, or the thing that I'm trying to point to is, if you're somebody who's in that pain and in that reactivity, that, I mean, it just keep following that thread. Like, just keep pulling on it. Just keep trying to rest into it and just surrender. Like, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to do. There is a need for, I mean, so maybe like attention. So paying attention in a sense could be thought of as a doing, but there really is a transition that happens where we can use our attention in an effortful sort of like, I'm going to focus in and zoom and like a hawk kind of watching a field for a mouse. So there's that way of using our attention, and that's very doing and active. But there's this other way where attention just opens. And so like maybe one way to mimic it for me anyway has been sound, like the doorway of sound. So if I'm sitting in a meditation or even just like kind of out on the porch, it's like, can I open up 360 degrees and listen to all the sounds around me? And so it's almost like I'm relaxing, open my attention. And you could even take it a step further and start to, like, can we listen to the silence that is underneath all of the sound? Almost like imagining sound is arising from a field of silence. And that doesn't make any sense to the rational mind.
No.
But it's kind of like helping train the attentional system in a really important way. And it's not to say that that's like some magic pill that's going to make all the reactivity better. You know, we in the Western world want our quick fixes. You know, give me the prescription. You know, how by next week can I have resolved this problem? And none of this follows that. And like, you know, starting to accept that and really rest into that is it's necessary.
And it can also be overwhelming. As lots of voices from your soul, all the little voices, or maybe soul doesn't work for you. Maybe the painful experiences of your past are very present in a moment, and it can be overwhelming for your attention to be focused on those places of pain. And that's why it's important to have a good therapist, a coach, a minister, a best friend, somebody who can walk with you through that process of learning to direct your attention in healthy ways to the pain in your experience, because that is what it means to be human, is to feel love and also to feel pain. And to be able to receive and also to give in a conscious way. And sometimes, maybe more so than others, we need to have some guardrails put on our experience so that we have a sense of, this is what I'm going to focus on right now, and I'm just going to allow my experience to just rest in this space and not try to eat the whole enchilada at once.
No.
The way we eat an elephant is one bite at a time, if you're so inclined to eat elephants. And it's okay. So in my life, there have been moments of recognition that I need to be intentional about training my attention. And so ways that I have done that is having a reminder on my phone set to go off 3 times during the day, once in the morning, once early afternoon, and once in the evening. And those 3 reminders were set for me to just pause and stop what I was doing and take notice of what my experience was. And so it was taking my attention, which oftentimes was on work, very doing focused, task oriented, to stepping back and, in this moment of being, what do I feel is arising in my experience? My body, what am I feeling? What are the thoughts that are passing through my mind? And then emotionally, in my heart mind, what is the experience of my internal world. And that helped me begin to find bits and pieces and parts of myself that I was unaware of, and to see currents and threads that were there, but that I hadn't started to pull on yet to get to the bottom. So just a very simple practice of setting a timer 3 times during the day and having it automatically go off so that I would just pause. And I eventually got to a point after doing this practice for a couple of years that I turned off the reminder on my phone, and I would just naturally in the morning drop into this space, and then at noon dropping into this space, and then in the evening dropping into this space. And pretty soon I realized that there were whole large parts of my day that my attention was on what my experience was telling me, along with the tasks that I was doing.
Right. Yep.
And it became an integrated practice into who I am, and one of the ways that I stay healthy and fresh in my daily life.
Yes. I will give a shameless plug for the How We Feel app. It's a collaboration between the Yale University Center for Emotional Intelligence and one of the co-founders of Pinterest. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. That app is so brilliant. And so it like, if our language for our own inner experience, if we've never really done this before, like thinking of what emotion am I feeling right now, and like finding a label for it, beyond just like, I'm good, or, I'm not so good, or I'm mad, or I'm sad, like finding kind of a broader, like we need more colors in our paintbrush wheel to start to really feel and see our inner experience with more and more detail. And that app is just a fan, and it's free. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. And there's lots of really great videos, and like some of the most brilliant researchers in the area of psychology and neuroscience. So that was hugely helpful for my experience. Then you start to be able to see patterns over time. If you're a bit of a data nerd and kind of a scientist, like it'll track, what time of day and what day of the week, and you can tell the app, how much sleep you got that night, and what activity are you doing right now. And then it'll start to give you all these really fun, you got this dashboard with all these reports and data. And like, I would start to notice, oh, that's really interesting. On Tuesday afternoons, I am, logging some negative emotions that just don't show up any other day of the week. Like, what is happening on Tuesday afternoons? When that pattern is like 2 or 3 months long, like you got to kind of start to wonder. So anyway, it can be very eye-opening in a way that is kind of like, ouch, this is painful sometimes, or confusing, but also like it really does continue to draw you in. Like there's a goodness, or like a truth to this kind of path that, even though it's so painful, we're inclined to keep coming back to it. Like there's a gravity here. It's like it means something in a way that we can't really describe.
Well, my love, you have my undivided attention.
This was lovely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. Look forward to next time. A little bit of remembering you, gathering up some of those pieces, and resting into the whole together.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.